Hello everyone, and welcome to our very first Mystic Matters Book Corner. Our special guest today is Michael Maciel, author of World Priest. And on our panel is Rev Dianne Willman from the Roman Catholic Women Priests. Welcome everyone, and especially welcome to our special guests. Over to you, Dianne.
Thank you, Michael, for your time, and it's lovely to meet you. Even if it's been for the last few minutes, the conversation has been delightful. I thought perhaps that you should share with us a little bit about your journey, your faith journey, what brought you to the point of writing this book, a little bit of context, if you're comfortable with that.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me. And I think I started as a young kid in Catholic school. I went maybe for 3 or 4 years and was an altar boy, and that was a really, I think, pivotal experience for me because it started to awaken my devotional aspect. And but then I became a teenager, and of course, all of that was bunk, right? I went into a severe rebellion stage, and found all sorts of reasons why God wasn't real, and how I knew so much better than any of the things that I'd learned in Catholic school. But, I think most teenagers go through that phase.
Yeah.
But then later, I had a lot of. I started having mystical experiences in the mountains close to where I live, because I was a skier, and I lived right halfway between the Sierra Nevada mountains and the Nevada desert, and I spent a lot of time just out hiking by myself, sometimes for a few days at a time, and then I ran into a group called the Holy Order of Mans. And this was a Christian mystical order, and it was very Catholic in appearance and in the way they presented themselves. And they had the sacraments, and we wore the priest collar, and so that appealed to me, because it wasn't just they didn't rely on doctrine; they relied on experience. So as I became more involved with that, it was quite a rigorous program of training, where we had communion every morning, meditated every morning and night. We lived communally, but under a very strict code of conduct. We supported ourselves, and we acted as publicly, we were like a liaison between the city and homeless people and the criminal element in the very worst parts of the cities that we were in. And we were in all 50 states at that time. And then later we had a couple of centers in Europe. So at its height, there were about 3,000 members. So it was a substantial organization, pretty well run. And, but in our work, we would go out on the street, and not to proselytize. In fact, we were told not to specifically, but to spread light. So we would go out in a meditative frame of mind and reach up to the Christ, and actually call down the light of Christ into the area that we were working on. And it was miraculous. It had such a powerful effect on everybody that came in contact with us, and on the city as a whole. And we would keep an eye on the crime rates and what was happening in terms of cleaning up these parts of the city, to see, kind of in a scientific way, whether or not what we were doing was working. And we were really quite amazed at the improvements that happened while we were doing that, and subsequently. So all of that, and especially working at the altar and doing the communion and the other initiations that we had, which were very similar in character and in methodology to Kriya Yoga. which is working with the Kundalini and drawing up the Christ energy up through the spine, awakening different centers in the brain. And a lot of this was based on Rosicrucianism, some of the exercises and the initiations that they have. But the goal and the result of this kind of work was that we would see the light within, in our body, in our head, up above, behind. It was as though you being in a dark room and then somebody with your eyes closed, somebody turning on a light, and that light would just be very palpable and very visible. And once a person had that experience, then their body would start to transform. They would start to get lighter and healthier, essentially, because there's more life force moving through them. And we regarded the life force as having its origin in the Christ, which is almost synonymous with the Son, which we called the S-O-N-S-U-N of God.
Yes.
Being our primary source of life and energy and intelligence in the universe, in our solar system. So we had that kind of Rosicrucian understanding of cosmos, and used that within our rituals so that it really was the working with, using that energy to awaken and enliven a person and ourselves. And so once we had that, fully in operation within us, or within the person we're working with, then we would ask them, where is the source of that light? We'd ask them to look within and see, where's that light coming from? And as they did, they would then zero in on the source, and that we called the God self within each individual. And this was like the interface, or our point of contact, or in religious terms, it would be like the face of God. So, and once we experience it, and it's a definite experience, it's something that you see within yourself. It appears within your inner vision. And then once you become acclimatized to that, then you build a relationship with it, and you can start asking questions, either questions of a spiritual nature or of a secular nature. It doesn't matter, because it was like a direct connection with the mind of God. So, and that would become somebody's life practice. Some people call it intuition, others call it revelation. There are many different ways to look at it, but really it's our connection with the divine, and it's getting rid of the idea that there are two separate minds, that there's really only one mind, and that's the mind of God. And we participate in that mind. We have kind of like a little roped off portion of it. And the process of this awakening means poking holes in that little roped off partition. And then we start to experience what some people have called cosmic consciousness, or Christ consciousness, or Buddha consciousness. So that was our path, and that's what I've been working with and on my entire adult life now. And that's what I teach, and I also teach like a mystical Bible interpretation class. And we approach the New Testament. For instance, something like if your eye is single, your whole body will be full of light. And we take that quite literally. And we don't regard light as being something, as being understanding. That light is a direct experience of the presence of we like to say that light is life made visible. The power of life made visible. So once that starts, there's no going back.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Michael. Wow, that's a lot just in a matter of minutes. I took down notes and just kept thinking, wow, do I stop you, or do I just, and so bear with me as I reply to a few of your statements. I think they're powerful, and they, for me at least, resonate deeply with writers and mystics like Teilhard de Chardin, to some extent, talking about cosmic Christ. And one of the things that also struck me as you were speaking is, I mean, isn't this the invitation of Jesus, is to wake up, awaken to this bigger, this more, this deeper, and that's often the call in spirituality anyway, is the sense of becoming aware. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. Waking up is an internal process, and it changes us from the inside out.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
once that process, and it's a process,
Yeah.
there's an initiation to it. And once that, an initiation is like a spark, it's like lighting the fire. And that can be done by one person to another, or it can happen spontaneously.
Yeah.
But once it does, the world starts looking different. It's as though you enter into a new chamber of life, and everything starts to reveal itself to you. You have a question, the answer comes. If you need to meet somebody, you meet them. Synchronicity, intuition, vitality, all of these things are amped up considerably.
I can't remember which mystic it was that said something to the effect of one glimpse of heaven, and your life is just not the same, as it were. One glimpse of God, one glimpse of the face of God just changes your life completely. So the other piece that I would like to pick up on is something you said about going within, and I think you used the word to move into the God self, to the deepest part of you. And I'm wondering if it had any resonances with either of the two. Does it have any resonance with what Jesus said around remain in me and I remain in you? Would that be the similar kind of context where the self and Christ almost merge in a sense? Is there a meeting and indwelling? Would that be the same kind of thinking?
Yes, I like to think when I connect with the Master, Jesus Christ, I like to see him in meditation, so that as I go within, I see him going within, because he always said it's the Father.
Yeah.
You know, don't why are you calling me good? There's only one good, right?
Yeah.
And so Jesus Christ is the mediator.
Yes.
And in essentially all throughout his ministry, he said, "Don't worship me, worship the Father."
Yes. Pointing, always pointing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's my relationship with Jesus Christ, is when I connect with him, then through him I can connect with the Father.
Yeah.
The Father, Mother, or the nameless one.
Yes.
The Creator.
Yes. And I suppose that now leads us into perhaps another question that I was grappling with is then who is God for you? I picked up various descriptions, if you like, through your beautiful book, World Priest. So would you like to speak to that a little bit more?
Yes. Well, we're in God, right? We're in God. God is the great being. And so to regard God as an objective reality, well, that's true, yes, but it's also a subjective reality.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a mind, we have a heart, we have a will, and we have a generative power center in us. These things are all operating within the greater body and mind and heart of God, and the creative energy of God. So when we create, we're creating with that energy, because we're like the fish in the ocean, right? It's like, I don't like that term, a drop in the ocean, because it's kind of hard to identify with a drop, because where does the drop end and God begin? And I think to be fully alive in this great being that within which we live, our identity is like an aspect given to us by God. So it gives us something that with which to relate.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
there's that point in spiritual evolution where that completely dissolves and a person merges with the all.
Mm.
And that's wonderful. But it's really hard functioning in this world being there, right?
Yes, it is. You need a bit of a fish skin around you.
Yes, yes. And I see it's not a thing of pride, but but it's a matter of it's like bringing something to the table. You know, that idiom. It's like, when we approach God, what do we bring? When in the parable of the 10 talents, he gives all of us, you know, talents and strengths and vulnerabilities and the whole spectrum of human experience.
Yeah.
What do we do with that? You see,
Yeah.
how do we develop that?
Yeah.
And whatever we do with that, we then bring that to God, and then there's a love union.
Yeah.
You know, but it's kind of hard to love somebody who has no ego at all, right? It's like, who are you? Where are you? I can't, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a love relationship, and it's an intimate relationship.
Yeah.
So that's my view of God. It's the great being within which we live. And in the Holy Order of Mans, we narrowed it down even more. We say that that God is like the solar system in which we live, because that's, if we can understand that, if we can get that consciousness, that awareness of this being, this solar being within which we live, because the sun is not just at the center of the solar system, it suffuses the entire solar system. We live within the sun. And it's not to say that God is only the solar system, but this is a way for us. This is where we live. This is the being within whom we live. And who knows what's beyond that? I mean, if we can get this part of it, then a greater understanding really starts to develop. Then we can understand things like astrology and numerology and all of these geometric based understandings of the cosmos. I like to say that I'm not an astrologer, but I like to say that the 12 signs really are like the 12 aspects of the personality of God. And the closer we get to the sun, then the more all of those aspects start to manifest within us, and the greater understanding we have of each other, and the empathy that we have for each other, and the connection we have with the whole. So I hope that answers you.
Thank you.
No.
If I was to paraphrase, perhaps, would the following, I like your fish in the ocean type image, because in a sense the union with God, with the lover, the intimate one, doesn't mean you merge and that there is a losing in a sense of your own and who you are. There, if anything, it is about you becoming more of who you distinctly are as a facet or a face of God. So it's a union, a convergence that, and I'm going to use Teilhard's language because I think this is the realm that we play in. It's a union that differentiates. It makes you more of who you are. Would that be something?
Yes. Well, it's very similar to being in a physical relationship, a romantic relationship, where the more fully you give yourself to the relationship, that there are those moments when you completely disappear and the other person completely disappears, and you enter into a place where you're truly one with the other person, truly unified with that other person, and everything just becomes one. But having touched that, really touching it, then you come out of that more fully who you are. Your personality then has the freedom It's been
Yeah.
energized. It's
Yeah.
been, and
Yeah.
the scales that cover us over and keep us from manifesting fully as our soul personality, that
Yeah.
keep us from being our soul, those start to fall away, and then we really then start to become who we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so can we move on to perhaps your book itself, World Priest? And the whole book is immersed in this notion of priesthood, being priest, and there is obviously a very particular meaning that you, maybe the order, has adopted. Do you want to just speak around what is envisioned, what is understood by being world priest?
Okay, so the first of all, priesthood comes from above. It's not the product of an institution. That, I think, is
Yes.
the central theme of the book.
Yeah.
And as such, then, I regard, and I'm not alone in this, of course, that churches and religions do not come from the bottom up. They come from the top down. So it's the mystical orders, the mystical teachers and seers, sages, gurus, those who are fully self-realized, come into the world, and they've embodied God. And from them, we get an articulated version of this universal one being that we live in, that's articulated for a particular population, a group, an ethnic group, or, like, the major religions are all specifically
Yes.
tailored, custom tailored
Yes.
to the people.
Localized.
Yes, yes. But all of the religions, it's like all paths lead up the mountain, and at the summit they become one. At the summit, the paths disappear. So it's quite easy, having reached that level of attainment, to then converse and fully connect with someone else of a different religion who has also reached that level of attainment. So priesthood comes from there. And so it's not a proprietary entity within a church or a religion. Priesthood comes from God. And as such, then the priest becomes a free agent.
Yeah.
To where if you're a priest, you're and fully take it on, then you can operate through any venue that you choose or that's given to you, because we have a calling, right? We have a calling, something that it's not something we're interested in or something that we think we might like to do. It's something we have to do. It's something that we would just die if we couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So, and that's like our first love, right? In Revelations, where the angel said to one of the churches, said, "You're doing great, but I have one thing against you: you've forgotten your first love."
Yeah.
And so, if a person is a priest and is operating or is functioning within a church, but they forget that first love, what are they doing?
Yeah.
Right? What are they doing?
Yeah.
They're not being faithful.
Yeah.
So it's like, no matter what you're doing, no matter what occupation you have or what calling you have in the world of service, that priesthood is there for you to do that connection and that flow from that summit is moving through you, but then it's up to you to direct it and to affect the changes and transformations that you're seeking in your life of service as a priest.
Yeah. Yeah. Michael, I love that. It flows from your first love. And I think, well, certainly I can relate to that in terms of my own journey towards priesthood. I certainly didn't envision that I became a priest, as it were, upon ordination. It feels like something arising from my first love by the time I was born, kind of a thing. So I hear what you're saying around a priesthood that flows out of an intimate union, an intimate connection with God. So thank you for that as well. And that would be a way that we could approach or perhaps look at pastors, ministers, religious leaders, and ask ourselves, well, where are you in this broader framework of, are you connecting with your intimate lover, or are you fulfilling an institutional requirements? And we've got to hold that there are two different ways, or two different, I don't even want to call it two different priesthoods, because it's almost like the one can only be one. It's the others is something else. Yeah, I don't know if I'm making sense at this point.
If I understand you correctly, it's like when you're functioning as a priest within a group or within a church or religion, then you become a transformative agent.
Yeah.
So it really, you become the seed. It's like you're dying in that organization. You take on the constraints of the organization. You're buried within it, and it's like being in a sarcophagus. And it feels like that sometimes. But you go in with the faith that you're the seed, and then you let the Spirit resurrect you. And as you resurrect within that, it changes everything. You become the transformative, you become the catalyst by which the whole body of whatever body you're in of people, that whole body becomes transformed.
Yeah. So again, to guard against just simply being a guardian of the institution, but more a transforming agent within by virtue of being immersed in God, immersed in love.
Yes.
Thank you.
And it's important to put out that almost never goes over well.
No, and it's almost like the institution and let's call it the spirit or something, the spiritual life is a little bit different. They're almost at odds with one another, and it's difficult.
I just learned something interesting in that when a chick breaks through the hatches from an egg, it's not because it wants to see the world. It's because the amniotic fluid within the egg becomes toxic.
Wow.
That's why the chick breaks out of the egg, because if it doesn't, it knows it's going to die.
It's going to be poisoned. Yeah. So, I mean, this again goes back to my wonderful mystic Teilhard de Chardin. He talks about there's got to be constant evolution, constant moving forward, because if you don't, there will be regression. And in this context of the chicken and the egg, that you're going to be dwelling in toxicity in a sense, because you're not made for that.
Exactly. And we never know which direction the Spirit wants to go, right? It's like the wind. We don't see the wind. So we surrender to the Spirit, but we can't really have an agenda. We might think we do, and and that can help, but there is a point at which that agenda has to go, because the Spirit will surprise you.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So maybe just to move on to one more topic before we open it for some question and discussion. Probably the topic that interests me the most, or not that anything else is not interesting. I mean, your chapters in your book are just delicious. Should we talk about communion for a moment? How do you understand communion?
Well, it's an experience. I have an understanding of it, but when I raise the chalice at communion, every bit of understanding goes out the window. It's like I feel the influx of the Spirit, and I feel the transformation taking place. There's a vibratory change in my being, and in the substance of the wine. It becomes infused with the consciousness and an energy, a vibratory quality that is unmistakable. And the act of administering communion, there's this flow of Spirit through me to the person who's receiving, which then opens them up so that they can receive directly. So that's like it's like serving food, right? If you serve the food, the person has to eat the food, and then that enables them to to go on with
Yeah.
life, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a movement of energy, and it's a direct, and no two communions are ever the same. The experience I have of each time that I say Mass, it's totally different, because the world is different, people are different, I'm different. And so the Spirit always fits in the slot you provide for it, and then it expands it.
Yeah.
So that's why we do it every day, because every day we're constantly changing. The environment is changing. So so there's always that adaptation that takes place.
Yeah. And in addition to that, if one were to think about it from another angle, it's Jesus, it's the Christ wanting to be with and in Christ's people, as it were, as often as possible, in an immediate, intensified moment. I think you used the word an immediate. There was something else. There was a quote you used: an immediate experience, as opposed to simply a memory. So to have that, those Cynthia Bourgeault talks about it as an instantiation, whereas there's this really channeled lens effect in communion, which is a flow of this divine energy. And to quote Cynthia again, there's a sense of Jesus choosing bread and wine as the dedicated channels for that.
Yes.
Any comments on that?
The bread and wine go back. We don't know how far that symbolism goes back, but it's interesting that both bread and wine have been transformed. Right? They're both transformed elements.
Yeah. Yeah.
The bread has been cooked, and the wine has been fermented, and that's something that we do. So that's an interesting understanding of why we use those elements, and it goes all the way back. I mean, the Eleusinian mystery schools use similar.
Yeah.
So yeah. I kind of lost the thread of your question.
There was a lot of threads in that one. It's Jesus's choice of bread and wine as the dedicated channels through which he can move into others through the priesthood, but through the priest's energy, as it were.
Right. Well, what we're talking about really is a meal. It's a communal meal. And when we sit down with others to eat, something happens to us physiologically where we open up. And so whoever we're eating with, we're automatically opened up to them. We become vulnerable in a way to who they are, and allowing them, just as the food is changing us, we allow their presence to change us. So that's a very special relationship. And which I think there's something in the Old Testament that says, don't eat with the unclean or something like that, and that's what it's talking about. Don't open yourself up to just anyone. Make sure you're within the community. And really, the whole experience that Jesus describes when he says, where two or more are gathered, there will I be in the midst of you. It's in relationship. I mean, we develop ourselves internally, but as in Buddhism, there's the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Sangha is the community, and all three of those, that's the Holy Trinity of Buddhism. We have to be in community, because it's in the relationship that we form with each other that something happens. Something really happens. And we lose our individuality to a degree where we then merge into one body. And that's an extraordinary experience.
And I suppose that's almost the premise or the understanding around the Trinity, and why it's three. It's a powerful number, 3 as opposed to a 2. Twosome is oppositional in a sense, but 3 creates something. It's quite a creative energy. Yes.
The symbolism that we work with are the circle, the triangle, and the square. We regard these as the 3 primary symbols. And the triangle really, when it comes down to it, is about relationship. It's like what you can experience it even if you're with, well, it's like what I just said. If you're with one other person and you're really in relationship with that person, something else emerges.
Yes.
And that third party it becomes a reality.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael. I could go on for hours, but let's open it up to those gathered here today, and I invite questions for Michael. EJ, is that your hand up, or no? Suzette, go for it.
Oh, wow. Thank you. My hand wasn't up, but I've got so many questions. Thanks, Dianne, and thanks, Michael. Yeah, I don't know where to start. I feel a bit overwhelmed.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it's a good overwhelming. But maybe, Michael, if you can share something with what do you experience when you have a mystical experience?
What do I experience when I have a mystical experience?
Yes.
Well, it's different all the time, of course, but the common denominator, I would say, would be a sense of union with the divine. It's like all of a sudden the whole world comes alive.
Right. And bodily?
As what?
And bodily, what do you experience?
Oh, bodily. It's I feel sometimes it's like an energizing. Sometimes it's like a dissolving. It's like all of a sudden I'm not aware so much of my body, and it's not even like becoming aware of my mind or consciousness. It's something more than any of those things. It's like becoming aware of being as such, being in itself, which transcends the mind, it transcends the body, it transcends consciousness even. It's like something that's ever present and just right behind me. And all of a sudden I become aware of that. And it just becomes kind of all encompassing. So language is not made to describe this experience. It just isn't.
Yeah.
But that's, that kind of points in that direction.
Yes. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I would like to know is, if you experience this, why do you think it happens and what do you do with that? Especially if you may become like me from a tradition where it's not talked about. I come from the Dutch Reformed, very conservative South African background.
Yes. Well, if you're a musician, then you're lucky, because that happens, right? Where you're engaged so fully in your music that you disappear, right? It's like the dancer who said, for a moment, I was dance. It wasn't me dancing, I was dance, So like a musician is like I'm no longer me, I am music. And the possibilities that opens up are nearly infinite. I mean, that's where inspiration comes from. That's where creativity comes from. It's all of a sudden, it's like God kind of coming through you, trying to express through you what God wants to express, right? And you're just the opportunity. God's an opportunist. You use anybody that comes along, God's going to use. So it's like the poet Rilke said, something like, God cares not about who does the flying, only that there is flying.
Oh, wow.
So,
yeah. No, thank you for this. I'm so grateful for this group, EJ, and I would love to, if there's future get-togethers, to be connected. Thank you. It's been quite amazing.
Thanks for the questions, Suzette.
Thanks, Suzette. Bonnie.
Michael, thank you so much. I am so glad I joined today. And I nearly couldn't because I look after somebody with dementia and we had a few issues today, but I could. And you know, when Dianne started to ask you the questions about communion, my ears pricked up. And I loved everything you said, and it made sense to me, and I'll tell you why. I live far away from Dianne, and she is my priest. And we have our communion and our mass every Sunday on Zoom. And I work in an old age nursing home. So I've brought the Zoom mass to the people in the nursing home, right? So I have about between 12 and 16 people participating on a Sunday. And I break the bread and I have the wine ready for them. I do it. I prepare the altar, I get flowers, I've got candles. But I have been a little bit disconnected from that because I feel as though I have felt as though until today that I'm not the priest and I'm not doing this. I'm just putting an altar there, bringing the bread and wine, and it's not me who's doing it. But suddenly today, and so I emotionally detach myself from it because I'm not the priest.
Have you been ordained? Have you been ordained?
No.
Oh, okay.
But Dianne's the priest doing the Zoom mass, but I've just created the altar
On her side, in her community.
On my side, far away from Dianne.
Yeah. Well, keep doing that and you'll have to be ordained.
Bonnie, I told you. I warned you.
But
careful if you start stepping into these energetic realms.
Yes, because the point is, suddenly I understand that I must not detach myself anymore.
No.
Because I'm seeing the impact on the people, but I'm not participating in that, if you understand what I'm trying to say.
But you know, it's like it's never us, right? It's always God working through us, but we have to be there.
Yeah.
We have to show up.
Yeah.
And part of the maturation process of the priesthood is it's like you take it on. Yeah. It's why we wear a mantle. It's why we wear the vestment, because we're literally putting on Jesus Christ. So, and to be responsible as a priest, you have to step into that role.
Yeah.
And be accountable for it, which means you have to keep your consciousness and your awareness focused, and so that you then become the transformed and transfigured Lord Jesus Christ, which is what we say in the communion. And then you become the channel, and it's a great responsibility, but it takes a little bit of boldness and daring to do that, because and the ego always wants to usurp that, right? It's like, oh, what a good boy am I, kind of thing. And so that's always the danger whenever we step into that role. So but it's a very self-correcting process, because the minute, this is why it's called the razor's edge. If you vary 1 degree left or right in terms of egotism or self-pride, you're gonna fall. It's just guaranteed. So it takes great humility and knowing that you have to be there, but it's not you. It is you, but it's not you.
Yeah.
Not you, but it is you. You know, there again, the language in our consciousness is not really set up to fully grasp that, but it can be experienced. But it's like it's like you take the step forward. You have to take that step. That's what God calls us to do, is put ourselves on the line.
Yeah. Michael, I think to add to that, I think one of the damaging effects then of the church, and
I'm sorry, Diane.
I haven't finished yet. So one of the damaging effects of, and I'm going to speak just in my faith tradition, Catholicism, I think for me what has been so damaging is the treatment of the laity, and I'm going to use that word just because that's the institutional word, because what it's done is it's disempowered. It's disconnected that person from showing up and standing into or moving into, let's call it the divine realm. The language fails. But to do what you are saying, the church has not helped that.
Right. Yeah. They're slow to pick up on the change.
Yeah.
It's like entering the sanctuary. It's like there's a gate, and you open the gate, and when you step into it's symbolic, but the corollary on the spiritual plane of that is you are actually stepping into a consciousness that is not on the other side, right, of that gate. You step through the gate, you step into the Holy of Holies.
Yeah.
And that's a very different place. So, but you've got to take that step, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. EJ.
I just want to share a bit from the chapter that you wrote on communion, which really struck me. And you say, when we sense that there's been a divine influx into the elements of the communion, the bread and the wine, and we feel the presence of the Christ in our midst, the physical act of eating these things is a proclamation with our entire being, from the physical to the spiritual, that we are experiencing what we already are. That is so beautifully put. I really, really enjoyed that chapter.
Great, yeah. That came out well.
Beautiful. Thanks, EJ. That encapsulates, the heart.
I think it's really the essence of the Christian doctrine of the incarnation.
Yeah.
Because what is that? What is the incarnation? It's we don't neglect the body. We don't neglect the earth. What we're doing is we're redeeming the earth. And the atonement is the at-one-ment, which is bringing that high level of Christ consciousness into matter, right? Into the body, into the world. That's the incarnation. It's bringing heaven to earth and blending the two so that the two become one.
Yeah.
That's essentially what the communion is. But the communion, what we do at the altar and in the sanctuary, that's the microcosm. Because what we're doing is we're doing it with the whole planet. We're doing it with the whole biosphere, everything.
Yeah.
We're transforming everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Other questions, comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to share with you guys, I recently went to Sadiba mountain retreat for the first time. And the chapel is built, in a circular fashion. So you enter from the one side and you exit from the other side. And that's where I, experienced an interfaith communion service. And that was just an amazing experience, just again, bringing heaven to earth. And a lot what you wrote in your book reminded me of, experiencing this most amazing interfaith service. So that was quite special.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah.
Thanks, EJ. Anybody else? Okay, well, EJ, back to Suzette.
Yeah, maybe I would just like to ask, you were mentioning about the smaller groups when we started off.
Yes, the Holy Order of Nuns.
And
Yeah.
no, there was something else. Yeah, was it that? Or, no,
Yes.
it was the mystical Bible.
The mystical Bible interpretation.
Reading, yes.
Yes.
If
Yes.
there's possibilities to be part of that.
Yes, I will send EJ the particulars, but it's just a matter of going to the website. And EJ, if you wouldn't mind sending me everybody's name, that way when you enter the waiting room on the Zoom platform, then I'll recognize your name and let you in, just for security reasons.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sure.
We'd love to have you.
Yeah.
Maybe just one last question from my side is, in one of your YouTube videos, you said that it's time for the priests to step up. Can you maybe just talk a bit more about that? Because I think we live in such difficult times, and I agree with you. I think it's really time that priests step up to their role.
Right, yes. Well, it's like not hiding your light under a bushel, right? It lets your light shine. You go into the world, and it's not so much what you say, it's not even so much what you do, but it's what you are. That's the transformative, that's the catalyst. It's what you are. And so, and what are you? I mean, essentially, we are all just two things. We're either a yes or a no. So if we see something that's not right, no. That's all it takes. If we see something that's good and right and creative and productive, yes, I am a yes for that. For this over here, no. Because your yes doesn't mean anything unless you can also say no. That's the essence of the creative authority of the priesthood, is in that yes and no. So in that we do judge the world. The judgment is a crucial part of the priesthood, and it's not an opinion. And it's not based on our ideas, or especially our ideology, because that can be so pernicious. So it's from the Spirit. And it's not based on feelings either. It's not like it's energetic, yes, but it's what we get from within. And that can be very neutral in its feeling. Just like a yes is neutral, a no is neutral, but it's very definitely either a yes or a no. That's the sword of judgment. Cuts both ways.
Yeah.
So if all things that a priest needs to develop, it's that ability to say no. And the mass mind, or the mind of the world, will continually tell you that it's not good to say no to anything. We must be open. We must be, all things are good. No, all things are not good. And I'm not speaking dualistically. It's just some things just are crazy, right? We live in a time of mass psychosis.
Yes. Maybe Michael, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, well, that's our responsibility, that from the Spirit, we need to make that decision. Yeah. And that word decision, it's like an incision, right? Yeah. We cut the wheat from the chaff. Yeah. But it's not us, it's what the Spirit directs us.
Yeah. I suppose, would another word for that kind of judgment be a discernment, or to use Ignatius of Loyola's words, a discernment of spirits? So what is orientating you on God? What is not orientating you on God? What is pulling you away?
That's right. What serves life? What promotes life? Yes. And not just life for some, but for all, right? Yes. Because we serve all. We don't serve just the members of our church, or our group, or our ethnicity, or any of that. Yes. God knows nothing of all of that. Yes. It's everyone, or it's no one.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
That was fun.
Thank you.
So I just want to thank you, Michael, for taking this time and for everybody that joined us, for, Diane and Bonnie. Thank you, guys. You've been really awesome. And, this was our first book corner event. And, my big mentor, Bonnie, with her wonderful Coffee with God conversations. And, so thanks, everybody. And I hope that you have a great weekend ahead. And thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, EJ.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Michael.
Diane. It
Thank
was
you.
wonderful meeting all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael,
very
I'll
much.
be in touch.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye. Cheers, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.